Hey everyone, welcome to the Higher Points. Nick Sowers here in the studio with my buddy Nate Hyatt, as well as our guest today, Mike Cressy, the guy that I go to church with. Just has a really phenomenal life story that we just wanted to share with everyone and have him on the podcast. And when I asked him, he kind of had a little bit of an apprehensive look, but also that I totally want to do this kind of thing. And so he's here, and we got him scheduled. And thanks for being here.
Thanks. Yeah.
But so I guess we normally just kind of start from the beginning, like where were you born, brothers, sisters, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, well, I was born. I'm not from Kansas, so
yeah, I couldn't tell by your accent.
Yeah. I remember I ran into a guy once at an AA meeting years ago, and he was from Kansas, and I had no conception of where it was on a map. I couldn't think about. I thought maybe it was near the Mississippi River or something like that. I had no idea. I had to go look at a map, But I was born in New York State, actually Long Island. So I don't know if you're familiar with Long Island, but
I've been once. So,
really?
Yeah, I don't really have.
Oh.
I don't really have much of a concept of where everything is after only being there one time.
Yeah, it's an island. A lot of people that are not from there, they think it's a peninsula because the maps, part of Long Island is part of New York City as well. So on the borough maps, for instance, it'll include New York City, but it's an island. It's surrounded by water. But I grew up in a small town called Islip, which is right off of the Great South Bay, about a mile and a half from the water, and I was born in Lakeside Hospital, which is no longer there. It burnt down in 1975. And I got one brother, a younger brother, and who was a police officer for 20 years. He's now retired. He's 51, and he's married with 2 kids. One started college, and the other one is just getting into high school, or I think he's in the 9th grade now.
Was he a police officer in New York?
Yeah, he was a New York City cop. He was a borough cop, not a borough cop. He was a what do you call it? A housing officer. So they got different. Like they have traffic, transit, housing. Your regular foot guy. But
yeah, they usually call those beat cops.
Yeah, beat cops. Yeah, but he got to choose. So he chose housing. So he was, I think, PSA 7 in the Bronx, which is kind of near Fort Apache over there, and it used to be a bad area. Now there's really no bad areas.
So what does a housing officer like that do?
They mainly police the housing authority within their district. So I had actually never been to his. I never visited, the precinct or anything, but they just drive around in the van and they just do regular calls, domestic problems, and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, I heard a lot of stories.
so you went through all of grade school, high school, everything in New York?
And that's the thing is, I was adopted. So I was born in Lakeside Hospital, and then about 8 months old or so, I was taken out of the home by social services, and I was placed in a couple of foster homes. And then from there, Mike and Jean, who are my parents, they took me in, and then they decided to adopt, which was unique at the time. I thought it was, looking back on it, it was unique because they were my age. Who adopts kids when you're, I think my mother was 4 years older than him. She was born 1916, and he was born 1920. So he was 48, and my mother was 52.
Wow.
And they decided they want to adopt kids. And I think it was because my mom had two other siblings who were a lot younger, 20 years younger, Francis and John, who had kids born my age, So she just always wanted to have kids, and I think she couldn't have kids. And then she adopted me. And then in the process of doing that, they adopted my brother, Carmine. So I don't know if I should use names or not, but my brother, I don't know. I don't think he cares, but, yeah, so, and Carmine was adopted right out of the hospital. I was kind of flopped around for a while. My adoption didn't go through until 1970, and Carmine was adopted like right out of the hospital.
Do you have any recollection of any of the foster stuff? Or
a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I remember sitting in front of the radio and the red rug. And then I remember being on one of those screened-in porches, you know. But I think that's what they used to do is, I know when I was adopted, when my mother first got me, I guess, I don't know if you would call it abuse, but neglect. Like I had severe diaper rash. I had a lot of problems. You know, it was all listed in the paperwork that I was able to scrounge up that my parents kept.
Oh, so you've actually seen
read
all that.
about it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, like I was kept in my plastic pants for too long and all that kind of stuff, and you know, and so malnutrition, and they had but of course, you know, I ended up being a big baby. Like I was huge, you know. You see the pictures, it looks like I should have been your height, you know. But I kind of, by the time I was 14, I just stopped growing.
Yeah.
I got to like the biggest kid in school at 5'10" and a half, almost 5'11", and then I towered over everybody like in the 8th grade. And then all of a sudden, I just stopped. And then everybody caught up to me and then shot past me. Like my little brother, he's twice, you know, he was my size when I was 17. When he was 13, you know,
Yeah.
14.
So what happened? So after school, like, did you like go to college? Did you?
Oh yeah, well, that was the good thing is I got to grow up all through. Like I went through elementary school, junior high, high school. All with the same friends. I had this group of friends that I had from elementary school, and we were always friends. You know, we just always knew each other, which was really cool. We didn't move around a lot, even though I was from a military family. My dad was in the Air Force, but he was in the Air National Guard, so he had a permanent station in Roslyn Air Force Base on Long Island. So we didn't move around. And so I really enjoyed like growing up. But from high school, I actually moved into New York City. At that time, I had another friend of mine who was working for the Metropolitan, where they put the operas on and stuff. And he was doing stage construction, you know, and they were hiring people over at this restaurant called Federico's. So I got a job at Federico's. Bussing tables and stuff like that. And then I ended up becoming a service bartender, and I went to one of their other restaurants that they opened up. So I was doing that and then trying to be an actor pretty much between 86 and 89.
So is that why you don't have any problem being up on stage in church and singing?
Yeah,
and stuff?
I guess so. Yeah. I don't mind. I don't know. I never had stage fright. I've never been afraid of standing in front of people. I do get nervous though, especially when I was acting, you know, like memorizing lines.
Yeah.
And especially, I never had a large enough role that I had to really worry about. I never had a lead role. I always had like, you know, supporting roles. So I was always able to get away with that, you know. But I took that to college but yeah, no, yeah, there was also drugs involved too, you know, back in the 80s. That's one of the reasons I actually did not finish high school at that time, and left high school. And I ended up finishing in 88. I can't remember, 89. Like I think my diploma says 89. You know, from Brentwood High School. I went to night school. I had to make up 2 credits because they screwed me. You know, they used to have 18 credits, and then they went up to 21. And that was it. You know, I'm like, I can't make 21. This was my last. And then I got into a big fight with the vice principal. I said, can I go to Suffolk Community College and take courses there and then have them? And he didn't want me to do that. And he said, you should come back for another year. And I said, no. So we parted. But I ended up going to Brentwood because they only needed 18 credits. And it was just 2 credits to make up, you know, 2 math classes. So I did that. And then I went into the Navy. But I went into the Navy to stop smoking crack. But that's why I went into the Navy. I was, you know, back then it was it was all over the place, and I was kind of reckless, and I don't know where I got that from, but I really don't, because I grew up in a solid household, you know, like my dad was a solid dude, and my mother was I was almost like protected until I was about 13 or so, and then I just felt like, you know, I don't know, I just wanted to get out and experience things, you know, so I just.
Did your group of friends have an impact on that? Like when you were in high school, I know you said you had the same group of friends. Would you do that? Would you smoke crack with them, I guess?
No. No, this was completely different.
Okay.
This was, it was, like I really, like I haven't really thought about how that led to, because the group of friends that I had, like I think there was 3 or 4 of them, and they were all in the top 10 of the class, you know, like, you know, number 6, she graduated number 2, you know, like, you know, just really smart kids, all in completely different classes than me. I was special needs from elementary school, you know, and then I finally got myself out of special needs because I just really stared out the window. I didn't want to do anything. And then by the time I got to 7th grade, I realized, wow, you know, I need to apply myself. So
that was about the same time that I had that realization of like, I'm having trouble spelling words that other people are not. And it was kind of a little bit of a wake up call, at least for me.
Yeah. It was a wake up call, just like walking around. Like in junior high school, you have a locker, you got a schedule, you have to go to classes.
Keep
it was
track of it
completely
all.
different. Yeah. And then I'm going to these little classes where these kids can't even hold a pen properly. I'm like, I don't belong here, you know. And it took me about a year to get out of that, but they would just label you and then stick you in a room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they cared, but they didn't know what to do. You know.
How many people would you have had in your school?
Well, we had a small school. I went to Islip High School. It was maybe, I remember my graduating class was would have been like 63 kids or something.
Okay, that's like Nickerson.
So I had like 57, something like that.
Yeah.
I figured he was going to say, "Oh, it was a small school. Like I don't know, 300 or 400 in my class."
Yeah. No. Now that whole place blew up. I mean, now like I looked it up. Islip High School has 900 kids. 900. Like Moffett Boulevard, Comac Road, all of those places where, you know, we used to play in the woods, they're all homes now.
Oh, yeah.
And condominiums and developed. And I went out there just, the last time I was out there was in 2014. And I went to, I wanted to go to the cemetery and ended up, I couldn't get to the cemetery because it was just, I was in traffic. The whole day I was just in traffic. So I really only had time to like, go to the town where I grew up, you know, and I went down to the beach, hung out there, went to the Starbucks, which used to be a BJ Electronics. We bought our first VCR there, and I went in and said, "Oh, this is a Starbucks," you know. And it's like, we've been here 10 years. I'm like, oh, all right. I don't know. I haven't been here in a long time, you know.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
If we could go back a little bit to your adoption, there's one of the things I was curious about. So we're going through some of this same things with Eli, so that piques my interest of. Did you ever, like, when did you? I guess the first question would be, did you ever feel like there was like a little bit of a gap in your life, maybe, like where you started to want to know, like, who are my parents, where did I come from, that kind of stuff, and then also like. Like, did you like? How did you fill that gap, or want to know more about it?
I didn't. Well, I filled that gap in wrong ways, you know. but that gap was a really. There's a thing that I would tell. I told somebody about this who had like kids of her own, but then she was always was a foster parent for a long time, and then. And I said, you know, these kids are never really going to think of you as, it was like when my dad told me, he had to tell us. I was about 6 years old in the 1st grade. And I think we were old enough to know. But of course, he said, you know, I could not tell you because these were 2 little Italian people, you know. Like my dad was 5'5", you know, my mother was 5'5". By the time I was 8, you know, I was taller than him, you know. So like we didn't look nothing alike. They're old enough to be my grandparents, you know. So So they told us early on. But I felt this kind of disconnect, you know. And even with my aunt once said, you know, we took you in or something like that, and we love you. And you're saying that you love me, but you're also, somebody abandoned me. Like somebody let me go, and now I'm being, you know what I mean? And when I used to think like that, it was just you kind of, that's when I'm writing this book, you know, and in it I talk about that identity. You kind of like I lost my identity. Like I really didn't belong to them. Like I belonged to these other people that they were saying these kind of bad things about. You know, they were saying, oh, well, you know, your mother had a drug problem and she ran with a motorcycle gang, and your dad was a drifter and all this kind of stuff. And it's better that you're here, you know. And my dad always said, you know,
and they're trying to do that in like comforting and reassuring
in
ways.
A comforting, reassuring way, but but it's actually
making the problem
worse. I'm like, man,
yeah,
you know. And now I'm just dwelling on that, you know. And I used to sit in the kitchen a couple of years later, and I would look out the window to see if I saw anybody sitting outside in a car or something, because they only lived, you know, a few towns over. You know, this is, you know, I was only born a few towns over. And and back then, see, and I don't really know if it's good or not. Like, I haven't really thought about that. But back then, they didn't want anything to do with the birth parents. If you were adopted, you know, you were adopted, and you had no, like, it was just you signed your kids off,
yeah,
and that's it, you know. And my dad tells the story of my birth dad had questions he wanted to keep me, you know, and he was I think he was 25 or 26, and he was a young guy, and he wasn't originally from here. He's from North Carolina, and anyway, but he wasn't married, and so it was a fight, and my dad went to him, and he said if he reneged again, he would give up on it, and he would give me back. And then my dad, whose name was Al, he signed the papers. He eventually did sign the papers. So, and I'm glad about that, because North Carolina, you know, and I kind of think I'd found him. If it is him, he kind of looks like me, you know, and his kids look like me. So, because I think he probably got married again. And, well, he did, you know, and had two more kids born in 84 and 86. So,
do you have any contact with them?
No, I don't have any contact with any. I tried contacting them just to ask, you know, hey, you know, I really believe that your dad was my dad as well, you know, and I mean, everything matches. And put the pictures next to each other, you know.
And you today's day and age, you could even do like the DNA just to get that confirmation. Whereas back in the 70s, or even the 90s, you couldn't do that as easy.
Yeah, but but they've never even read any of my messages. And I think I did call him once about 25 years ago, like a long time ago, when I found him when he was living someplace else, and he said, nope, never had kids, or something like that. You know, I think he was lying, but you know, it's just like I don't know why he would not want to, like you know, but
it's not like you're going to take a bunch of money from him in child support or something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, he ended up passing away, and he was 78 in 2020. So yeah, and then but it would have been cool, but that's not a priority anymore. You know, back then it was a priority because I was still searching for an identity. You know, I kind of like lost this identity. You lose this identity when you're adopted. You kind of like, well, I don't really belong to them, and I don't belong to anybody else. So who do I belong to? You know, like I know that they care for me and they're always there for me, but there's still that disconnect. You know what I mean? Like I would say, I love you, and I call him dad, and well, you know, but there was always a disconnect, and I was always trying to fill that with something. And I think my brother had a different. I never really talked to him about this because he's quiet and he doesn't He's very stoic. He doesn't like to say anything about anything. And so
I'd say you have some of those same qualities as well.
Yeah.
I think things like this are something that, like, I think and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but seem like this is something new for you as far as coming out and like really openly talking about, because even sometimes when you and I are talking in church and stuff, you're still kind of like a little, you can see the reserved, a little bit on some things.
Yeah. And I get that from my dad, everything in the family.
Yeah.
Nothing outside the family. It's not like we're keeping big secrets, but for some reason, everything in the family, and you don't talk about anything outside the family and all this kind of stuff. So Carmine's still very much like that, but I think he had an easier time. He might have had an easier time at it because he was adopted straight out of the house. Like it was arranged before he was even born. It was prearranged, and they were from New England, and so she had the child in New York City, and him, and then right there, like she had the child and then handed it off, to my parents, and they took him home. So, and I remember when he came in, just because I was maybe 3, so I think maybe he had that nurturing, that early nurturing, where I didn't have that. You know what I mean? I didn't have that nurturing. I was sloshed from place to place, and even living with my mother, my birth mother, for instance, they were constantly on the move. She was part of a motorcycle gang called the Pagans, which was very popular on the East Coast. And
I've heard about that.
And they would just ride all over and crash, and I always told stories, the child endangerment. I was put on the back of motorcycles and without restraints or anything like that, and so. And my dad joked. He said, "Maybe that's why you like motorcycles." I'm like, "I don't think so, Dad." But
it's in your blood.
It's in your blood. But my dad said that he said he really believed that it was the environment that changes the kid. It's not so much the genes. Like you came from these drifter kind of parents, and druggies or alcoholics, and and that's not you, because that's what they said. My mother had verbalized that she didn't want any boys in her. And she had 3 girls. So I have 3 older sisters who I have no contact with. I've never met. And and then she had me. So I was their half brother. And but she didn't want any boys in the family because all the men in her family were in prison for one reason or another, either murder or rape or something. Every single one of her uncles was in prison. All of her brothers were in prison, And I thought about that. I thought, if I was raised by them, I would be in prison too.
Yeah.
And if I got married, I would be in prison. I'd be in prison for the rest of my life. By this time, I'd probably be in prison for the rest of my life if I was raised there, thinking on those terms.
Yeah.
I think that's because I was always bent towards that. That kind of just. There's also. A thing that my dad taught me some things, and he taught my brother some things that were completely contrary. For some, like he talked to him differently than he talked to me. Like for me, he would say, "Nobody's going to give you anything in life. You got to get it yourself, and by whatever means possible." So if without hurting anybody.
Yeah.
But if that meant doing things that were illegal, then so be it, Like I had a thing where I worked for a place, and box of Reeboks would drop off the truck, and I would sign it off and then drive into Queens and sell the sneakers on the street. I made a profit, and for my dad, that was a positive thing. That was good. You could, what'd you get today?
Yeah.
I got some toilet paper, and that's like kind of. But then on the other hand, it wasn't. There was one guy I took advantage of. They hired me and to deliver pizzas, and I thought, okay, and they said, "Can you come back tonight and work?" And I remember I didn't even give him my last name. They just hired this kid, 16 years old. So I go there, and he gives me his bank for $40, and he gives me 3-4 pizzas to deliver. So I deliver that. I come back. He gives me some more pizzas. I go out and deliver it. And I meant to keep the job. I really did. But I drove around and I couldn't find this one address. And, there's no cell phones or nothing. So, like, man, I've been out there for like 30 minutes looking for this address. I can't find it. So I got I didn't want to go back. Like, I'm like, I don't want to go back. He might yell at me. So I just went home. And I kept all the money and the pizza. And we ate the pizza. My friend and I ate the pizza. And then like 2 weeks later, my dad gets a phone call and he comes in and he goes, "Did you rob Tina's Pizza?" I'm like, well, not really. The guy didn't even ask me my last name, So he goes, "You still got the money?" I'm like, yeah. So I give him the money, and he went there and he gave them the money back, and I followed him and I was crying, and he said, he said, "We're not going to tell your mother, but next time don't get caught,"
Yeah.
Pretty much, don't get caught doing stupid stuff, But anyway, you got to keep me focused because
no, this is
I'll drift,
No, actually, that's the whole point of a podcast is just to kind of let your conversation and your story just unravel organically. And that being said, as well, when we get later on into your story and stuff, like when you want to talk about like what changed you and all that other kind of stuff, as far as what changed inside of you and who filled that gap inside of you, feel free to speak openly. About the Bible and that kind of stuff. Like, I don't want you to feel like you can't. That's the thing that we're about here is just the genuineness and the conversation. So that's why we've been quiet, because this is just perfect. So don't think you're doing anything wrong.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. But that's what, that searching for identity, that feeling of a loss of identity.
And is that why you filled it with like drugs and stuff?
Well, it was, I filled it with I was searching for, like I was constantly searching for, like I was the guy that would make all the phone calls. I would call everybody to set everything up for the night, Got to do something tonight. Got to be around people all the time. Got to be, and that's where I got my identity from, was the fact that, through all the people that I hung out with and my friends. And I had all sorts of friends. I had my very smart friends who went to college and, she graduated top honors, worked for DuPont in a think tank, one guy worked with a congressman, ended up, big time lawyer from a big school in upstate New York. And then on the other hand, I had a buddy that, were buying cocaine and baking it up into crack and smoking it. And it wasn't like I was a daily drug user. It was just more or less like a weekend warrior, and
I would just, social thing pretty much.
Yeah, it was social. And I don't want people to get the wrong idea, because anytime you use, there's no such thing as a social drug user, like if you're using drugs, there's something wrong, like you could be a social drinker, I guess, but you would really have to examine yourself, in that context. But there's no, because eventually what happened was between 85 and 95, by the time 95 came around, I had started picking up crack again in the early 90s, by 94. And I was living near a town that they still sold crack on the street, and every time I got drunk, I would drive by and pick up crack. And then I put the two and two together. I realized I got to stop drinking to stop smoking crack.
Yeah, it lowers my inhibitions and
yeah. And that's the thing is I woke up twice out of a blackout with crack. Like I had the pipe that I made and everything, and I'm like, and I don't remember buying it. I don't know how I got it. I don't remember driving there. I don't remember coming, and that scared me. I'm like, man, I gotta stop. This is ridiculous, So I asked my friend. I said, can you take me to an AA meeting? He goes, take yourself to an AA meeting. My silly friend Chris. But I did, and I got sober for a year, and then I moved back into New York City. But it was just filling it with like I went into the Navy to stop hanging out. But the thing is, whenever I wasn't hanging out with a certain person, I wasn't smoking crack. Like I didn't have the urge for it. You know what I mean? I didn't have the urge to use anything, But I did always drink, I always went to the bar and hung out, And back then, the drinking age was 19 or 18, and then it went up to 21 eventually. But I was at that age where it didn't matter. And plus, when I first moved into the city, I was young, and I used to take the 8 because I was born in '68, and I would chalk over the 8, and I could pencil in a 4. And you didn't have to take your license out of the drive. So everybody thought I was born in '64. So, and I went on legal jobs as being born in '64. So, anyway, but yeah.
So that transition into like wanting to, search for your identity,
Yeah.
where did that lead into you, transitioning from Mike to Michelle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, it was, I was a whore, I was a whore dog, to be very blunt, I just, I was constantly, I had a problem, with what do you call it? Your sexual drive, your libido was very high. And I don't know what the context of this podcast.
We mark it as explicit every time we upload it. So
what men do,
Yeah.
And I would do that a lot, like 17, 18 times a day, it just to relieve the tension. And I was constantly searching, and I didn't care. It didn't really matter to me who I was having sex with. If it was a guy or a girl, it didn't matter. It was just all about just feeling good. Like relieving yourself. And that's why I hated that part of me. And my dad would always, because at that time they were expanding the Long Island Expressway. They were building. They were cutting the middle part out. They're going to put an HOV lane in. They started putting all these parking rides up. So the parking rides is where the guys would hang out, and I just thought it was dirty, Like lesbians don't do that, but gay guys, they'll hang out in the park and do that dirty stuff, Like that's a dirty, filthy crap, Like I'm just trying to walk here, So, but anyway, I had this like hatred for it. But then, on the other hand, I didn't care, And then I thought, well, I can make money and do the same thing because I'm good looking, and I'm so I can sell myself and make money doing that. So I kind of started doing that, and so I did that for a long time. And then even when I transitioned, I still did that, and to a different extent, and.
Does that go back to your like dad of essentially of make a buck however you can kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so, and also just I don't know, like looking back on it, it's like entrepreneurial because I was using something that,
yes,
but it was just like
you're providing a service.
I was providing a service, but it was just I don't know. It was an easy way to make money.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have to work and. As hard, like I didn't have to, I never had I think my brother once said that, you're always looking for the easy way out, and in retrospect, he was right. I was always looking for the easy way out. Even when I was introduced to Christ back in the early 90s, I still thought, man, I don't want to have to do all that.
Yeah.
I got to give up this and I got to give up that and I got to give up, I don't know if I could do that. I want to find something that I don't have to give up any of this, but I'm still going to find some sort of salvation, and it doesn't work. Like I've searched, all of those avenues, and nothing ever worked. Nothing ever filled me because I always was trying to fix myself. That was the problem.
Why did you feel broken?
Well, because I felt abandoned. It really came from abandonment and rejection from my mother not wanting me.
I gotcha.
How long did it take for you to understand that that's where this came from?
I was 48. When I came into the Dream Center, when I went into the Dream Center, I started realizing there was a very profound thing. This the teacher told me. She said, I don't know. She said something about I forgot. I wrote it down, but something about your mother did a very heroic thing in giving you up. Even though she did it for the wrong reasons, she still did something that was right. That was the right thing to do. And the way she put it, I thought, yeah, that's right. And I was able to forgive my mother at that point. But it wasn't until I was 49. I mean, I went into the Dream Center at 48, and I'm now currently, I'll be 54 next month. So, it's I forgave my mother for that, and it's not like I wanted to be a woman or I liked women or I always had those tendencies. I always had tendencies from when I was going through puberty because I don't know, just anything like just trying to live out your fantasies, And I know guys have fantasies, and just trying to live out these crazy fantasies and make them a reality in your life. And I was able to do that with about 80% of them, The others would put me in prison for the rest of my life, but at least 80% of it, because I'm frank, The thoughts in my head were vicious and cruel and towards anybody, And it was just and you can understand how people can get twisted like that, and like I got to a point in my life where I can understand the mindset of someone who goes into a grocery store and starts shooting people when you've lost all hope and you don't care and you hate everybody because you hate society because no one wants to, because you think everybody's rejecting you.
I was saying, does that stem from some of the hating of yourself as well?
And hating
because
yourself.
You were talking about doing things that you didn't even want to do, that
right,
you didn't
yeah.
like.
And not finding and not even looking at the good things, you know what I mean? Like just concentrating on the bad things. So like I can write poetry. I had some poetry published in 1992, and I was good at sports, and and I was good at acting, and when I went to college eventually, I was good. I could have been an academic. I thought about that. I thought about going and becoming a professor or going to law school and it's just it's always this self-loathing, like you really don't like yourself, you don't like your situation, and you're trying to constantly fix it. You don't like the urges that you have, and I would fantasize about if I can just get rid of my sex organs, I'm not going to feel this anyway. I'm not going to feel this hatred, the hatred or for myself and all of the issues that I had. Maybe that'll go away. And so, and it did to an extent. When I first started, it was really when I moved back into New York City in 1995, and I was about a year sober at this point, or 96, and I met a couple of people who I knew they were men. I knew that they had been men, and they were living as women. And I met them at AA meeting because that's the first thing I did. I follow instructions good. Like the AA said, if ever you move, don't do anything for the first year. So I didn't do anything, and then I realized it wasn't the city, it was me that was my downfall. So if I'm going to be able to get ahead in anything, I got to move back to New York. I can't stay in Deer Park. So I moved back into New York City, and immediately I did the things that you're supposed to do. I found meetings. I made friends. I got a job right away at a coffee shop, and then I ended up doing catering a couple of months later, but just to pay the bills. I got a quick job, and but at this meeting I met these two people, and I just they looked so happy, like they looked content. They had it together. You know what I mean? They had their life together. Their life meant something to them. And they had friends, and they had a community. And I thought, this is it. I want to be like them. I want to hang around them. And that's what I started doing. I just started going to AA meetings and making friends and in the gay community, and following around this woman, and I always had thoughts of doing that. I had it's just crazy thoughts, and it's not that crazy because it's actually very common if you look it up. But men who want to become women so they can become lesbians and be in a lesbian relationship, these are some of the thoughts that I would have, and then I would do that, but I really didn't want to be identified as a trans woman. I want to be identified as a trans man. I was actually born female, and and I would search to try to do these things, and I was hanging out with these girls who were now guys, and so it's very confusing, but you're just constantly trying to reinvent yourself, and maybe this will work, maybe this will bring me happiness, maybe this will squash my abandonment issues because my mother hated me, and because now that I hate myself, and it helps for a little while. It does help. Like when I first went on the medication to suppress your testosterone levels in your body, they give you spironolactone, which is a drug. I forgot originally what they use it for, but it cut my testosterone down. Normal levels were like 600 and went right down to like 10, 20 or something, so, and you can feel it in your body, a drastic change, and you just become calmer, right? More collected. I can think now, like all of a sudden I felt like, wow, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I had those models in my life that they were, that if they can do it, I can surely do it, and they did it at the same age that I was at, 27, 26 years old, when I first met her.
Is it spironolactone?
Spironolactone. S-P-I-O-R.
Yeah.
Lactone.
It says it's used to treat high blood pressure, heart failure, prevent strokes, heart attacks, kidney problems. It's also used to treat swelling, edema, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it was used for suppressing testosterone as well?
Yeah, because it has side effects. But and took in large doses, it would you would start to grow breast tissue, and you would lose your libido. You would lose it would mask your testosterone. Huh. There's also other drugs for, and then I took estrogen as well. So I used to take the pills and get injections. So, but yeah, I kind of did everything to escape my reality because I didn't like myself, and so, and even when I used to, I've tried a lot of different religions, and I would read the Bible every once in a while, and it would say, love your neighbor as yourself, and I would say, well, how can I love my neighbor when I don't love myself, because I don't love myself. So I hate my neighbor, and that really resonated with me, and so, and I'm just going to go that way,
What are some of the religions you've tried?
And so, well, when I was in college, I tried to, Judaism, I tried to convert to Judaism, which lasted about a year, I think. And then, Hinduism, Buddhism, Vipassana meditation, Catholicism. I went back to being a Catholic, a very stout Catholic. I would do the rosary every day. I became part of the
you said go back
Mary group.
Did you grow up Catholic?
Yeah,
Okay.
I grew up Catholic. Yeah, and that's another thing. If I grew up with my birth parents, I would have grew up Protestant probably. I would have grew up Baptist because that's the church that they went to. They were Christians when I found them online. They were Baptists from North Carolina, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I'll just show up to the church. And
say you've been to the Baptist church a couple of times in Sterling, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and but yeah, no, I just that's
Well, so you're going through. So you've transitioned and you're doing medications. Is there a surgery that's associated with that you did?
Yeah, and then I took it a few more steps because the people that I was modeling myself after, they like I didn't understand why you would want to do something and then not just do it. Like when I do things, I want to go all the way, or I'm not going to do it at all. I'm not even going to try to do it. Like I don't want to be identified as trans. Like if you're going to be a woman, then be a woman. Don't be a woman. Don't be a man dressed like a woman. Because I remember going to this person's apartment, and they took their wig off. I was a man. It looked like a man. And fake implants for the breasts, and like, dude, you're just a transvestite. But their identity is in them. They feel empowered by being by making believe that they're a woman, like just acting. You're acting a role, and you're acting out this role. It doesn't make any sense. It never made any sense. If you would just, I just wanted to. If I was going to be a woman, I was going to try to be a woman 100%, or get as close as I could. I don't want to be known as trans. I want to be known as biological. And that was trying to make my fantasy a reality. And that's no way I was going to be able to do that. I'm not God. I can't create myself.
Right.
I used to dream about, like, what if I can, take my brain out of my body and then put it in a woman's body, and then I would just wake up and learn how to move my fingers and stuff and walk and,
Yeah.
and then I would be able to live my life, and that's going to bring me happiness, So I went for it. I started saving money, and I had several operations. I had 2 throat operations to get rid of my Adam's apple, so you couldn't see that. It's called a tracheal scrape, and then I had a vaginal plastic. I forgot what they call it, but sex reassignment surgery in Texas, and then I also had an additional surgery, Lambda surgery, on top of that to make it look more real, and then I had breast implants done only once, and I didn't have anything. I think it was 450 cc. It was crazy because I remember coming out of that, I was hurting, because the pressure, like it really hurt because you're a man. And with women, they don't have to go under the muscle; they can do it in the pocket. But with the men, they have to go underneath the muscle. Sometimes they do that with the women, but so you don't see anything, And but it pushes up against the muscle. I ended up, when I went for my reversal surgery, I had 2 torn pectoral muscles here that they had to repair, and all of that extra loose skin that was here that she sewed up. She really did a good job, except there's a really ugly scar from here to here, that and I have no strength whatsoever on my chest anymore. I used to be able to bench like 250 years ago, but now I'm lucky if I could do the bar. But that's all right. I don't care, or like 15 push-ups, on my knees.
How hard was it for you to find? Because I would assume today finding somebody to do those surgeries is easy. How hard was it for you to find somebody to do those surgeries then?
There were a lot of doctors. It was kind of open. It was hard to get the okay to do it. Nowadays, it's a lot easier. Like, you don't really have to. You can just go to a therapist for I don't know how long. Like, I don't even know what the requirements are, but I think it's like just a year, and it doesn't really have to be a psychiatrist. It can just be a clinical psychiatrist or your own therapist, and they can prescribe you medication and say that I've been counseling this person for a year, and then write a letter of recommendation, and that's it, and that's all you need. Back then, I needed 2 letters of recommendation. And I needed to go to either a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. And I did, so I had to go through psychological evaluations, But I was telling them what they wanted to hear so I can have my results. You know what I mean? Like, I would just start, because I heard other people say, oh, well, I always felt this way since I was 6. So I would think, all right, well, I kind of did, So I just elaborated, and I would just say it, that's one of the things that I battled with for years and years and years, was the abandonment and rejection, and trying to be something that you're not, was lying, and just lying about yourself to everybody. And that kind of carried on to the life that I was leading. And it wasn't so much that I was lying to myself then, but I was still around people that knew me and knew me from before. So I couldn't lie about that, but I was accepted. But then I started, wanting to be fully accepted. I want to be fully accepted as a woman. So when I left New York City, when my sponsor had moved to Florida, he retired. My sponsor from AA had retired, and this was in 2004. And I had been working as a construction worker. I got the job through non-traditional work for women, and I tried to lie to them and say that I was a biological female, but they wanted my high school transcripts for some reason. And so I said, but I graduated college, I have my college transcripts. It says Michelle Cressy on it. It doesn't say Michael, and they said, no, for funding reasons, we need your high school transcripts. So I had to get my high school transcripts, and that was the only document that I could not change my name on. Everything else I changed my name. I wanted to eradicate Michael Cressy completely and just be Michelle. And I was able to do that. I mean, he's still today, my birth certificate says Michelle Giovanna Cressy, where my name was Michael Thomas Cressy. And I got it done on every single document, but that was the only document I couldn't get it done on. And they were kind of elated that I was there. Oh, we never had a trans person here before, and I'm like, I'm not trans, I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to be known as trans, but anyway, I went through their training program, and I was in the union. I was a union worker. And of course, women get into the union right away. There's no waiting list or anything like that. So, but that's when I started. When my sponsor had left, I just stopped going to meetings. I stopped going downtown. I started separating myself because I wanted to live
your new life.
In my new life.
Yeah.
And they know too much. So I need to find people that don't know me, and I can be around them. So that's what I started doing. And then I thought, well, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. I don't believe in that dogma, and we were sitting in a pizza joint, and Jeanette was sitting across from me, and I ordered an Amstel Light. And she said, Shelley, she used to call me Shelley. She goes, Shelley, you're an alcoholic. I'm like, I don't believe in that, and it was fine. I started socially drinking, but really it was until 2014 or 2013 when I really thought, I saw no hope. Like I couldn't see a future anymore, because I was constantly trying to get people to accept me. And now it was harder for me, because I kind of looked androgynous, And that's when I came into the Dream Center, I really thought that I had arrived. Like I thought, wow, they accept me as female. Because I remember the director once saying, I'm not going to let that woman do that. It's like, she really thinks that I'm a woman, and it made me feel so good, like I've accomplished it, I'm here, they believe me, they accept me, and I want to stay, But then after staying there and graduating, and then even going into leadership there for 9 months, the Holy Spirit said, but they're accepting a lie. Right? They're accepting a lie. And I'm like, no, don't do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to tell them. I want to stay the way I am. Everybody likes me, And that's the whole thing, is I wanted everybody to like me, And you can't get anybody to like you. You're doing really well in life when there's people that hate you. Then you're doing well in life, because you're being you, I agree. You're not trying to get other people to like you all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's all I wanted to do. And I was so scared, because I essentially lied to these people this whole time. But I thought, because I could have kept it going. I think, well, not as a Christian, because the Holy Spirit really convicted me. And when the Holy Spirit convicts you, and if you don't do anything about it, That's the sin that you can't come back from. That's the sin that he talks about where you can't come back from. That quenching the Holy, disregarding what the Holy Spirit has just said to you. He said, you need to come clean. You need to tell these people what's going on. Where you're really from, because I wanted to stay.
And I'm sure that was a scary prospect, considering you'd spent the better part of, at this point, 20-some years?
Yeah.
Trying to convince everyone of the exact opposite.
Right.
And now you're at a point where it's like, I've finally arrived. Like,
right.
These people wholly believe me as a woman. I'm not identified as anything else. I am. Right. I've met the precipice of what I wanted from my life.
I've created myself. I found out that I am a Christian woman. And I'm not a woman, It's just, it's like I created that. You know what I mean? And we can't create ourselves. We have to be who we are. And that's what I love about, Jesus will, when we accept Christ into our heart, when we ask Christ into our life, he starts to change us. And he doesn't stop changing us until it's complete, and there's no middle ground, like and I even, when he says, if you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out. He wants you either hot or cold. That's it. You're either on fire or you're freezing cold so I can work on you. In the middle, I can't do nothing with that, So I got that far, and the Holy Spirit convicted. And it was just, I almost became a nun. I came very close. I used to go to these, I tried everything. I would go on retreats to, they were called monastic live-ins, where I would go for a week and shadow a nun for a whole week. And I went to the point where I filled out all the paperwork for this order up in Syracuse, New York. And I thought, I can do this. But then I thought, man, 15 years later, they might find out, and then there's a big scandal and it'll be in the, and I just got nervous, and I didn't go for it. I didn't do it because of that. But it's just like I never knew that I would be able to be 100%. And it's all, and it's just it doesn't work, it doesn't work in the end. And I guess it could work for people that like my friends who I modeled myself after, like they got to a point in their walk with their transgenderism that they were comfortable. They were comfortable identifying like that, but it didn't. Like, I just wasn't like that. I just couldn't conform to that. And the way, like, my friend would categorize everything. She would say, well, I have my trans friends, and then I have my gay boy friends, and then I have my straight girl friends, and then I have, like, she had all of these little pockets of people that she would hang out with, but none of those other pockets of people overlapped to the other pocket. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like she had her work friends, but everybody knew. And everybody was accepting. But then they're really not accepting. Because when you're hanging out with the other women, you're thinking but they know that you're trans at the table. They don't talk about the same things that they would normally talk about. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so when I came out here and people started validating that I was a woman, like when other people say you're a woman, if this person has kind of doubts or they look at you kind of funny, they're going to think that because this other person thinks that. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, like I've arrived, and everybody believes me. And this is the life that I want. And so, and I'm having these deep, intimate conversations. Like that's what I wanted when I was a kid too. Why can't I talk to the girls, Like have these deep conversations, and I started to hear these stories, but then they would ask me, they would say, so what was it like when you gave birth to your son, because one of the lies was I had a son, who lived in Chicago, like my lies were elaborate, they encompassed everything. It was like a whole other world that never existed, but yet I knew every.
You thoroughly thought them out.
I thoroughly thought it out, like the 100-acre wood, in Winnie the Pooh. I knew every single corner that Christopher Robin knew. I knew that woods inside and out. This is my story. So there was no catching me in a lie. It became like fluent. It became just this fluent thing. And so, but I had to study things. Like there were some times where I would get caught up and they would say some biological things to me and I had no answer. I never even heard of that, And then I went and I had to look it up and then come back and go, oh yeah, that's,
I just picture you like turning to the side with your phone, like,
yeah.
Googling really quick.
Yeah. Googling menstrual cycles. Well, let's see. Like I would just take other people's, like I had a girlfriend in high school who, I know when she had her first period. So I just said that I was 14, like she was, like I would just, just make up things based on other people's stories.
So you basically have made a bunch of other people's lives your own life.
Right.
You're basically piecing together.
Yeah.
To make your own story.
And you can remember it better because
it's relatable.
It's relatable because it comes out of a truth. Your lies always come out of some truth, Like, yeah, I was there, but I really didn't do anything that I told you about, but I actually did go there. I was there, but and the lies were just, just everything to make yourself something that you're not, and it was hard to stop doing that. Like people would ask me things, and I would say, "Oh no, that actually didn't happen." Like I would have to think in my mind, did I really? Oh no, that was something that was made up. Like I was never really, I'd never been to Wisconsin, but part of, like somebody would say, oh, well, you used to go to Wisconsin all the time. And then I had to pause and think, well, that's where my son was going to school. Like that was the story, So yeah, I was there in the fictional story, to visit him. But I had never actually been to Wisconsin. You know what I mean? Like It's just like you had to catch yourself and then say, oh yeah.
Did that further that void that you were feeling? Because it's like you're seeking this validation and this fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
But whereas, like, let's say you did live all of those things, you did do all of those things. That's a piece of you, that's a part of you. But now you're like putting other things in this, kind of, I guess what we kind of termed the hole that you were trying to fill.
Yeah.
But it's almost like it just goes down into this deep cavern that, it just disappears into the abyss like everything else because it's not truly your experiences, your life, your things. Did that make it feel worse? Did that make you feel that disconnect even more?
And it did. But I would mask it. I would just gloss over it. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't think about that. But that's a good way to think of it because I always, you think about the analogy of you're digging yourself a hole and you don't realize you're digging yourself a hole. And then before long, you're so far deep that you can't even reach the top anymore, but you're down there thinking this is the way out. This is the way out. And you keep digging and then somebody yells at you, and you look up. And you realize, oh, I'm in a hole, and when you realize you're in a hole, that's when everything becomes dark, like real dark, and all I want to do is be liked and nobody likes me, and then you get into this darkness, and that's what leads to suicide. That's what leads to, I'm going to kill everybody because I hate everybody and
nothing's fulfilled me.
Nothing's fulfilled me.
Like
nothing's worked. This world stinks.
And you felt like you've tried everything.
And you feel like you tried everything. And pretty much I tried enough to say I tried everything. I didn't try everything.
Right.
But I tried enough to realize none of that is going to work. You know, even if I tried only 20% of what's out there, that's still, it's part of the world. It's part of man's creation, not God's creation. And so, and that was when I was in that jail cell looking out the window. That's when I realized, you know, I think I need to come back to Jesus. And I said that out loud. And whenever you say Jesus' name out loud in a cry like that, in a plea, he comes to you, you know. And
so why were you in jail?
I didn't know how to kill myself. So what I did was I went out and bought a gun, an M&P Shield. I told you I had an M&P Shield. So, and then I went around and I was taking my anger and aggression out, and I was afraid to shoot at people. I didn't want to shoot at people, but I would shoot at inanimate objects like buildings and tractors and things like that. So that's what I started doing. And I never kept up with the news. You know, I lived on a farm in Rush County. I wasn't keeping up with the news, but apparently, you know, it was like all over the place. Like somebody's going around shooting up buildings and co-ops and farm equipment in different counties. And that was me, you know. And then one time, I had been trying to drink myself to death, you know. I tried to shoot myself, but I couldn't do it. And the M&P Shield has a heavy trigger. And when you pull on it, you can pull on it a little bit, and then you can hold it right there, and it doesn't fire. And I remember I had it at my chin, and then I just kind of leaned over, and all of a sudden it went off in front of my face, and it went through the cabinet. And I thought, wow. And nobody heard. You know, and that even furthered the isolation. Like, you know, because I was in my cabin, the house is right over there, but nobody came to check, you know.
How do you think it would have gone if somebody would have come and been like, did you hear that? Or are you okay? Or
I probably would have lied. You know, I would have said, no, I'm fine. You know, oh, my gun went off by mistake, you know. I was just trying to clean it or something. I would have lied, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but it was one night on a Friday night. I don't know if it was Friday night. One of the nights I was running out of beer. And I needed to have beer. And in Kansas, everything is closes at certain times, and I don't want to drive all the way to the outer limits. So I drove into Larned, and as I'm driving into Larned, I was wasted, you know, and I had the dog with me, and I lost control of the car, flipped it over, and it wasn't until about an hour later that I woke up in the flipped over car, and I thought, oh no, you know. So I got out of the car, and I found the dog, you know. And I tried to push the car over. I couldn't do it. So I called up the nuns, and she says, "You're gonna have to bite the bullet on that." So I said, "All right, you know, can you get the tractor out here?" You know. So I called the tow truck, but then the police came as well, and the tow truck was called. So they came out, and you can smell it, you know. The beer cans all over the place. I tried to hide it by throwing it further out into the field, like an idiot, you know. Anyway, but I blew. They arrested me, and I went to Larned, and I blew a .6 or something like that. So I was under the legal limit, but he still charged me with the drunk driving because I was in an accident, and he knew I was drunk, that I was in the accident. It's just time had passed, so. So he charged me, but I didn't lose my license because I was under the limit. But I had to pay like $150 or something like that, and then I got out. But they said I had my gun in my purse, you know, and I said, yeah, I do have a firearm, you know, and I gave it to him. And by this time, a couple of the nuns had come from the church, and I said, and he asked me, he said, "Would you like me to give your gun to one of the sisters?" And I said, no, that's all right. I'll pick it up tomorrow. And if I had said, sure, go ahead, give it to one of the sisters, I would have went on, who knows what my life would have been like 6 months later, or even a few months later. I might have ended up killing somebody. But because I said, go ahead and keep the gun, I'll pick it up tomorrow in the morning, I went to pick it up, and they didn't give it to me. And then I went again a week later, and they didn't give it to me. And they were investigating. The gun matched, you know, all of this damage. So I went out and bought another gun. And but when in the interim between buying these guns, maybe 3 weeks went by where there were no reports of shootings. So, and it just started to narrow down. And then they caught me on video shooting at Yoga Central, which was a yoga place. And I was kind of angry with them because they didn't hire me. Or I don't know why, but I wanted to be a yoga teacher, because that's what I went to school for back in 2010 or 9. And so I taught that a little bit at the Health and Racquetball Club. And now it's Health One. I don't know what the name of it is. It's in Great Bend. But I taught there for a little bit.
Do you feel like a lot of those that you lashed out at, did you know personally, or was it most of it stuff you
No,
didn't?
I didn't know them really at all.
Yeah.
It was just like them I knew because I actually went in to see if they were looking for yoga teachers, And it was just a haphazard thing. I was just driving home drunk, and I thought, well, I'll just shoot this place, So I just pulled in. But it was the first time I ever got out of the car. And I took aim, and I unloaded the gun into the building and drove away, and they had surveillance camera. And it was obvious. It was my minivan, and when the police came to investigate, I was wearing the same clothing as in the video. And I kept saying, that doesn't look like me at all. And then I packed up the car and left because I knew they were going to come back with a warrant. And that's when I had the epiphany when I drove to Great Bend. And the next day, and my car was filled with all of my life and the dog. And then I thought about the nuns. I started thinking about somebody other than myself. And when I thought about somebody other than myself, I thought, I can't let them go through this because they're going to show up, and they're going to show up, And they did. I went back to the farm. I turned and I went back to the farm. If I had chose to keep going, I would have eventually gotten caught. But the thing is, I would have done more damage because I would have thought, well, I can commit suicide by police. All I got to do is show them, point it at them. I don't think I have to pull the trigger, and they'll gladly appease my, So anyway, I thought about somebody other than myself. So I drove back to the farm, and within 30 minutes, like 12 SUVs and the SWAT team with the I don't know if they were SWAT, but the guys with the armor and the big M16s or whatever, and they were just walking around. But because I was there, I was able to direct them to where everything was, tell them that they didn't have any part of it. All of the ammunition is here.
I wish every search warrant was that way.
Yeah.
That would make life so much easier.
Yeah. So they didn't have to go into any of the other houses and nothing, and they just, and it saved a lot, because, it saved a lot. And then eventually they said, and then they arrested me, and I spent about 3 months in Larned. And then I finally, and my bail was only $500 or something. It would have been $500 with a bail bondsman, because it wasn't like it was. I got a felony, lowest felony you can possibly have, for destruction of property more than $1,000 or something like that. It was just the money involved. I did a lot of damage, like $20-something thousand worth of damage. One guy's GPS system I hit on a tractor. So, and I'm still paying that off. And it's been 3 years now. And it's down to about $8,000 now, I think. But I'm still paying it off.
So how did you end up in the Dream Center after that experience? Was that part of your court? Or?
Yeah, no, it wasn't part of the court order.
Okay.
I was just in jail, and they said you might as well keep her in jail because she might as well just stay there because other charges are going to come from Rush County. Charges are going to come from Barton County. I was just being charged from Pawnee County. So there's going to be other charges. And so, but that wasn't about, it was about a year later when they finally charged me. I was already in the Dream Center when the director got the call and said, there's a warrant out for Michelle. Is she living there? And they said, yeah. And so well, I'll drive to Rush County and we'll turn ourselves in. So that's what we did. But what was the question? Sorry.
Basically, like, how did you end up at the Dream Center after the whole court process?
So I was in there, and my lawyer that I was appointed knew the director and said, "Did you ever hear about the Dream Center?" And I said, "Oh no, I never heard of it."
And can you tell us a little bit about it too, while you're telling your story?
So I had no idea about it, and I'm sorry, I did hear about it, but I didn't know anything about it. I just heard Dream Center, and I thought it was kind of a quirky name because. Anyway, I just thought it was like a place that helped people, but I didn't have any idea what it was about. And the nuns knew because the nuns were affiliated with them when they first started a little bit, in the beginning. And I said, well, what is that? And she said, well, I think they have a discipleship program, but they're very religious. That's what the nun said to me. So I said, well, maybe that's what I need, So, but I ended up going to the Dream Center, and
this was by your choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had the application was mailed to me, was brought to me at the jail. I filled it out, and then I sent it back through my lawyer, and the judge granted release, without bail. So I was able to get out, and the nuns came and brought my car. I don't know how they got it there. They drove it with 2 flat tires. Like, they put air in my tire. What's the matter with you? Like, how did you get it here? There's no air in the tire. It's like 9 miles away. You drove on the dirt with no air in my tire? That's what I said to the sister. I'm like, what the heck? And all of my stuff was still in it too. Like, come on, Anyway, but, so I went to Casey's to fill up the tire. And I thought about getting a tall boy. And I was at that Casey's on my way to the Dream Center. But I didn't, And I drove to the Dream Center. But the Central Kansas Dream Center is a place, the director, her name is Kimberly Becker. And and at the time, Lisa Parr and Cindy Broyles. Those were the 3 women that kind of started it. And Parr was married to her husband, Randy, and both of them were missionaries. So, and Kimberly had this vision of starting a place, and she ended up with the help of Mark Ball, acquiring that building, which is the old high school, and then the old Roosevelt Junior High School, but then had been abandoned for a really long time. So it was a wreck, but they renovated it and they made it into something to help. It was there are other Dream Centers all over, but a Dream Center is sort of like I guess I don't know what it's about how they use the name or anything like that. But like there's a Dream Center in Arizona, there's a Dream Center in California, So but they're all independent of each other, And so and our Dream Center, we used the Teen Challenge program. And I never heard of the Teen Challenge program, so that was good. I really advocate the Teen Challenge program.
Yeah,
it's an awesome program. I was certified to teach that, and that's what I did for those 9 for the time that I was in leadership there at the Dream Center. And she started this because she had a heart for people. Kimberly has a heart for.
Well, she just gave up a
broken
kidney.
People.
Yeah, she just gave up a kidney.
Well,
so,
last year, she. But it's just like she has a heart for broken people, and she will go, she will fight for you, and she will fight for you, and do the best job that she can, and tireless, and it seemed effortless. But then when I went into leadership, it wasn't effortless. There was a lot of effort into it, but it just seemed that way. But there's a lot of stuff in the background that you don't see. But they had a men's program and a women's program. I think they have a women's program now. I was in the women's program. I went in the women's program, and so that's when I like, wow, they're accepting me. Like I don't have to try to lie, or I don't have to even try to like convince anybody of anything. I'm being accepted, for who I am. But who I am was a lie, So, but anyway, it's located in Great Bend, Kansas, and they have an application, and it's a really great place.
And they also serve meals to like the homeless and stuff every day.
Yeah, and they serve meals to the homeless every single day. When I was there, I was helping out in the soup kitchen. We would serve 80, 120 people. And then when the pandemic came, man, we were doing bag lunches. We had a lot of people, serving a lot of people that came out of the woodwork that I'd never even seen before, that were showing up. So, and you have a lot of regular people that show up, and we would do anything, get people a hotel room if they needed an overnight stay. We would direct them to different facilities. We would help in any way that we could, and the Dream Center was a beacon of light. It really was, because in the interview that I had, I don't really remember the interview much, but I remember Lisa, Kimberly, and Cindy were there, and the one thing I said to them is, I said, I need a long-term, comprehensive place to work on my stuff, to work on myself, because I'm completely screwed up. Like nothing is working. Nothing has ever worked. Like I was it was that blunt, and so they accepted me into the program. And it's funny because I went through the 9 months and I graduated, but then I stayed there for an additional 3 years as leadership, but I was still in the building. I was still learning and growing and building my character. So that's what I needed. It was like a 4-year, where I just had to get pulled out of the world and retaught, and re-educated, to how to actually live, and to live as a Christian. That's how to actually live, And there was another thing that I studied, philosophy that I had studied, and I remember looking back at the philosophy and thinking, that's Christianity. That's the Bible minus Christ.
I find the same thing in like leadership trainings.
Oh yeah.
When they talk about servant leadership, and just like Rob says, look no further than the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I think anything, and I have no problem talking about any of this, but anything that in this world that's good, usually you can tie it back into the Word somehow, and in some way, it's got like those ethoses and those thought processes in it, and I think that's also interesting because when you were in the Dream Center, nobody knew that you were Mike Cressy.
Right. Nobody knew.
So you also didn't have an opportunity where people were saying, well, you gotta change back, kind of like Bible thumping that in, like that's against God, like that's that kind of thing. Like this was a process that you did. Like,
right.
I mean, that Christ did through you.
Well,
but you didn't have somebody that was like beating this into you, like forcing you to do this, right?
Right. And that's the thing is, Pastor Dozer really did that. Was he took his time, because even after I had come clean, and when the Holy Spirit convicted me at that women's conference, and I told him a day later, and it was a good almost like 9 months before I started counseling with Pastor Dozer, and gearing up to when I counseled with him, and he said, I see the man inside of you, and
at this time you haven't gone through the transition surgery or anything like that. You're
nothing.
still very much Michelle in every way.
I was Michelle in every way, and only a few people knew. A few leadership at the church, and a few people at the Dream Center. Even one of the lead teachers didn't know. Like it was kept secret, and it was done that for protection, so it wouldn't lead to anything. So, but the thing is, if I went in saying I was trans, it would have been like God led me there the way I was, thinking I'm complete. I'm now complete. Wow, I want to stay here. And I want to serve God and stay here. But you can't serve God and stay here and stay in the lie. You have to change. That's what the Holy Spirit said. So I have to change. So I told him. But the thing is, if I had gone in with any other way, I would have felt that abandonment. I would have felt that rejection more, and I probably would have walked out, if I was pushed,
I think a lot of people get that bad.
Yeah. Yep. And so, and you don't want to push.
Yep.
You just want to love. You just
Exactly.
want to love. You just want to love. And so, and that's what they did for 9 months after I had come clean. They didn't push or nothing, almost as if it was like an option. Because when I look back, it's like, there's no option, like you have to do this, but it's, making sure that you're in the right space, but for me, whenever the Holy Spirit ever speaks to me, it's like, that's it, it's, once I have that confirmation, there's no more praying about it. It's just, let's put that into action, let's go, let's do what God just told me to do. And so, and that's when Pastor Dozer said, well, maybe we can take about a year, like 3 months. and I had the money for the operation, and the church supported and raised up the funds, of course, with some of my own money. And they had raised up an additional 5,000 or 6,000 or whatever it was, I forget. And then some of the stories that had come out of that, like one of the stories was, a man who had, who was Christian, AG, third generation or second generation, grew up in Assembly of God, but had a vicious habit of smoking. Like he just couldn't give it up, and he gave it up. And to my knowledge, that he still doesn't smoke today. But he did that because he said, if Michelle can do that, then I can do that. You know what I mean? So, and even though, like my story is really about responsibility, identity, abandonment, and rejection. All of the trans and all of the other stuff that floated around in that is just a circumstance of those four things. The byproduct of those four things. Of me trying to fix myself by creating something completely different. Like Monty Python. I used to love Monty Python. And now for something completely different, and it's true. Like human beings can change themselves. They can radically change themselves from one moment to the next. Like you live one way all your life, and then now you're a retired police officer. You make a decision, and you can go another direction.
Exactly.
And only human beings can do that. Like we're created to do that. We're created to choose, But through the guidance of Christ and the Holy Spirit living inside of us, that's when we make those proper choices. And without that, we're just constantly, trying to grab stuff like that illustration. Yeah, you use it, and then it slips through, and then it's gone down that hole. And you keep going and you keep going. You're never really going anywhere, and just like in, I love the Lord of the Rings too. It's just, you take that first step and you don't know where it's going to lead you, but all paths lead somewhere. You know what I mean? And there's only one path. There's only one path that leads to salvation. And that's a hard thing to wrap your mind around. And that's a hard thing to just say one. There's got to be something else. But there really isn't anything else, and don't waste your life, Like another person that I used to listen to a lot, said, if you're doing something for 10 years, we think that's a little too long. If it's wrong, you've been doing it. But to think of things as like wrong and right, to put them into that, like I was living wrong. Like it wasn't like, because people around me were saying, oh, this is going to be good. This is the right thing. You have to do you choose you. And yeah, but it just feels wrong. It still feels wrong, but everybody's saying it's right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, you're saying it's right, but it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. And there is a thing about feelings. We're not supposed to go off of feelings. We go off the word. But we have this intuition. We have this built-in protection. If something's not right, we can feel it. We can sense it, you know. I mean, even the craziest stuff that I've done in my life, there were times where, you know, when I was invited into the room, I'm like, I'm not going in there, you know. Like I know right away, you know, this is gonna turn out.
Yeah.
This might turn out bad. So I left, you know. But that's just preservation, you know, like, and some people go into the room and then they're never seen of again, you know. So
one of the things that caught my ear when you were telling your story in your YouTube video was that Pastor Dozier was the first one that really acknowledged you, like, I guess, as a man, and like and treated you like a father, I guess.
Yeah.
I may be paraphrasing that wrong, but
well,
why was that important?
It was important because, like, my dad was a good guy. The only thing is he really, the way he raised us was he didn't want us to hate him. Like, he didn't want to create any problems. So we never got in trouble, never got scolded, really. You know, I mean, little scoldings here and there, you know, don't put your hand in the fire, don't stick your head, you know, like little stuff. But I never got, like, punished. I never got grounded. You know, we just kind of did what we wanted to do, you know, but we always had respect for our parents. So, you know, if my dad said to come in at 10, I'd come in at 10. You know, I really want you home by 10. But if I came in at 11, like, I never got in trouble for that, you know. I never got in trouble for anything. And it was because, you know, I never got in trouble for stealing that money. I remember telling that story to a girlfriend's mom once at that time, a year or so later, and she said, if you were my son, I would have, you know, this and that, and sent you to therapy and all this kind of stuff. And my dad's like, just don't do it, you know. Like,
don't get caught.
Yeah, don't get caught. We're not going to tell your mother, and the next time, don't get caught, you know. And that was it. That was the end of it. But for me, that was enough to not do something stupid like that. But the next time I did something, I planned it out properly. I made sure, you know, but still I made stupid mistakes. Like I would put a 10 in with an 11 and I got caught, you know.
So
but,
so then Pastor Dozier, so he kind of held you accountable through that?
He held me accountable, where my dad really didn't hold me accountable. He just wanted to make it right. You know what I mean? Like by just saying, you know, he didn't hold me accountable, but Pastor Dozier did. And he said, I'm going to stand by you as your pastor, and, you know, through this. And that's when I knew I can do it. Because at that time, even if I knew it wasn't working out, and I kind of started having fantasies about changing back, but I didn't know how that was going to happen. And I didn't know it was possible. I really didn't think it was possible. I mean, sometimes I used to pull my hair back, you know, just to, you know, put it in a man bun, you know, like that, and a hat on, just to, and I wouldn't have any makeup on, and I would look at myself, and I'm thinking, I don't know if this is possible, you know. And so I thought I was kind of like stuck this way, and I'm not going to be able to change back. But when he said I would stand by you and keep you accountable, pretty much that's what he was saying. I'm going to stand by you as your pastor as you go through this. Then I knew I can do it. Then I knew I got somebody backing me. And when you have somebody backing you, you know, who's got your back, and anything's possible, you know, and Christ has our back, but that's what the body of Christ is for. You know, we're backing each other up, you know, we're supporting each other, you know, we're holding each other up, we're taking each other's burdens. You know, I'm going to help you with this burden of getting rid of this.
That's what I love the most about our church and our Bible studies and stuff.
And it was amazing. And when I knew that, the next day, because he says, go home and pray about it. So I go home, and the next day I'm sitting in front of the Dillons and the little Dillons in Great Bend, and I had this overwhelming feeling from the Holy Spirit, and I got out, and I'm like, I can do it, and I got super excited. And then I wanted to do it right then and there, you know, and then everybody's like, no. Just take it easy, little by little, you know. I started picking out clothes. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go 100%, like I always did. You know, once it goes, once I'm told something, that's it. I'm going to run for it 100%. And it did. Like, it was really remarkable, you know, from the way I looked to the way I look now is completely. But at least now I don't have to worry about jumping in the pool, you know, getting my hair wet. or anything like that. You don't have to worry about anything, like, because you're just normal. Like, you sweat, wipe the sweat off your face. You don't have to worry about your mascara or your makeup or anything like that. Yeah. It feels funny talking about that. I was on a trip with Teresa Dutton, who passed away. She was brutally murdered in Great Bend. And she died in the line of duty. I always say that. She died in the line.
I would agree with that.
We're working for Christ. But we took a trip, and this is after she was one of the people that knew. And this is after I had come out to everybody, about 9 months after the fact that I came out to Kimberly and the Dream Center. 9 months later, she found out, but we still went on this trip that we had already planned. And so we were driving out, and I would always kid around with her in the car because I was always sounding like Michelle still. I studied voice, my voice was good, because
for your acting,
for my acting.
Yeah,
and I also, I practiced speaking in a falsetto and being able to hold a falsetto without straining my vocal cords. And I would practice talking as a woman on the phone. And I got very successful at doing that. And it was hard to transition. Like, I couldn't go back to doing that now. Like, it would be straining, But I transitioned to be able to speak in falsetto as if it was a normal thing. You would think, and I was still talking like that at that time. And on the trip, every once in a while, Teresa would look at me and I'd go, "Yeah, right. Just do that over there," and she would look and go, "Stop that!" Because I was Michelle, and all of a sudden this 50-year-old woman is looking at you, like talking in this deep man's voice, and I freak her out all the time.
But you, like you said, she knew.
Oh yeah. She knew. But that was cool. We I made a lot of good friends. All the women friends that I had, and it's funny, when you, it's funny in the sense that it's interesting how things like that work. Like when I was in the Navy, for instance, I was on a submarine and we had a small crew, like only 76, 80 people. But I knew everybody's name on that crew. And I knew all their kids' names, and I knew, we'd go over each other's houses and stuff like that. And, when we were off crew, and then we'd be back on crew, and it was like a family. And you knew everybody within a year and a half. I couldn't remember one person's name except Brick. There's just one guy that I was kind of friends with, like more so than anybody else. And so it's the same thing, like I spent 2 years with these women, like getting to know them and being in intimate conversations and really getting involved. And then like walking as in the way that Christ created me as a man. A year later, I had a hard time remembering people's names. It's like you've transitioned so much that it's no longer part. And now I'm learning their husbands' names. These guys that I've heard their names, but I never met them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Oh, you're so and so's husband." "Oh yeah, I talk to your wife all the time." I was like, what are you doing talking to my wife? But they were my friends, And then I realized, like there were some women that were close friends with me that weren't anymore, So there was that separation. I remember Teresa had a difficult, she said she felt, she told me her feelings.
Yeah.
Because
at least she was willing to do that.
Yeah, praise God, she was.
Yeah.
And we were good friends. We were about the same age, close. I think she's 6 years older than me. But, similar. Raised, in similar situations. She was an SN kid too, and I would always tell her, you don't have that. That's not your limit. And we had a lot of, we were good friends. So, and then, and then getting to meet all of their husbands, and it's still the same thing, But I think God orchestrates everything, he sees our life on like a piece of paper. Our whole life is on that paper, and he sees every single possibility, the hundreds of thousands of choices, and he knows what the outcomes of those choices are going to be, before we make those choices. You know what I mean? And he wants us to make the right choice, because the narrow path, right? People search for the narrow path, but very few will find it because it's narrow. It's hard to find. You have to work at looking for it. You have to work at looking for the narrow path. But we have all of it, and he sees that. And so even in our destruction, even in what we've created in our life, he still manipulates that. He still, well, even though you're still living in a lie for these 9 months, I'm going to expose you to things that you can, like he exposed me to these intimate conversations where now I have an idea of how the other half feels. Like men always say, "Oh, I don't know how a woman feels."
Yeah,
I know how she feels. I know exactly what she's thinking right now. And that's why she's saying those things to you.
Right.
And then and those things will help, further his kingdom through that ability to be able to minister to everybody, to men who are struggling with rejection and abandonment, and to women who have been hurt and don't know how to stand up for themselves, or they don't know how to, or they're doing it the wrong way, or they're thinking they have to be a man in order to stand up for themselves. They don't have to be a man. There's power in their femininity, and there's power in their...
Is that what you're writing about in your book? Is that what's the title of your book? Do you know?
Well, no, I don't know the title yet. But the book is... I didn't want to write an autobiography, so I read a couple of autobiographies of people that came out of that lifestyle, mostly gay men that came out of that lifestyle, not so much trans biography. I read one from a woman that became a man. She lives down in Oklahoma, she lives down. I was going to say he. No, she lives down in Oklahoma, and but it was a shorter book, but it was more like a storyline, And I wanted to do it where I was just answering questions. What was it like? What was it like when God told you to trust other people? And then I would answer that question. So it's just a series of questions. So anybody can just grab the book and say, "Man, I really want to know about, what is it like to stop lying to yourself."
Right.
And to come clean. And there's a whole chapter on stop lying to yourself, and how I stopped lying to myself, and how I had to work through that. And so it's going to be, I think, about 14 chapters, and each chapter heading will be the question. And then I'm not sure whether I want to make it where I have the Bible verses, or just mingle Bible verses right into the storyline. And that's how I've been kind of writing. Right. Anyway, it's, I would say, things like, but God finishes what he starts. And that's, Philippians chapter 3, or Philippians chapter 1, verse 7, God will do he'll begin a good work in you and finish it till completion. And so, but I wrote it as in just part of the sentence, just add Bible verses in. So the book can be for anybody who's just interested, not so much a Christian book. Because if I was still in the lifestyle, I wouldn't necessarily go and say, I want to read an autobiography about, Yeah. No, you want to stay in that lifestyle, so you want to make it appealing to people that are struggling, that are looking to come out of that lifestyle, or don't know that they're looking to come out of that lifestyle. Because I went in there searching for something, and I don't care what anybody says, if she tells me, I've had these feelings all my life since I was a kid, and I've had these feelings, I've always thought I was a woman trapped in a man's body, and yeah, that might be so, but the reason why you feel that way is because this is a fallen world. It's just like anything else. It's just like any other temptation in your life. People are born with gay tendencies. People are born with tendencies to say, well, I don't really feel comfortable in the role of being a boy. I want to be a girl. Some are born with the predisposition to drink alcohol or to do drugs. And, we're all born a certain way. We all have these facets because of a broken world, but we treat them the same way. It's like God didn't create you in in that way. We live in a fallen world. It's just like somebody being born with cerebral palsy, but then they make something out of their life. Where Christ uses that to make something out of their life. Christ uses the bad things and the evil things in the world to shine His light on this evil and corrupt world. And one day He will send His Son back and to conquer. Like the earth is groaning for it, right? And in Romans 8. So, you weren't born gay. You were just born with these tendencies, just like other people are born with other tendencies, and you treat them just like anything else. That's the Bible says, God's word says, well, this is wrong. There's a wrong and a right. The sexual immorality. This is, these feelings. It's good to feel sexually aroused, but only with your wife, And so, if it's with somebody else, then it's wrong, and then you have to look for ways to deal with that. You treat it just like anything else, just like any other temptation, just like a temptation to drink, or just like a temptation to do drugs. I have a temptation to go to the woods and have sex with other men. You treat it just like any other temptation. That's a temptation. It's from the enemy, and you are not gay. Yeah. You're not born that way. Well, you're born with temptations, and we all have specific ones. And some have them and some don't. I always hear stories about guys that they especially with drug use. I had sex with a lot of different people. I'm like, yeah, well, that makes sense. Because you don't care. You just want drugs, So any means you can get it, you're going to do it, That doesn't mean you're gay. That doesn't mean that, you have to live this lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So we're kind of coming up on time. So I just wanted to wrap it up with, how do people like maybe follow your journey, follow what you're doing, and then like, whenever your book does get published, that they could see that and maybe share that or read that. Like, do you have social media? I know you have a YouTube page. You want to share that as well?
Yeah, I have a YouTube page. I don't post as much as I did like last year. I was posting like little teachings, every week that kind of spoke to me. But I have a web page called Mike Cressy Ministryforlife.com, and that's exactly what it is. Mike Cressy Ministryforlife.com. That's it. Yeah. And www. And so and there it has the video that Spark Hatch had done that they I don't think they ended up not using it for that documentary or something like that, but I ended up getting the rights back to it, so I was able to use it on my own website, and then I have some other videos, and mostly I have blogs, and I blog, but I don't blog often, maybe once a month. But then I'm open to it's called Mike Cressy Ministry for Life, and it's really just counseling and sharing my testimony as an evangelist at wherever anybody would invite me to come and speak and tell my story. I didn't tell the whole story here, but it's really just people can contact me through MikeCressyMinistryForLife.com.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of hoping for. If somebody wanted to, they were maybe struggling with that.
If they're struggling with that. And I have spoke to a few people since starting the web page, and but mostly it's the parents of people. Actually, it was all the parents of people that I speak to. My son, my daughter, I'm praying to God. I want to speak to the kids. That's who I want to talk to.
I was going to say, do you have much success in that? Like when the parents contact you?
I think I have success. Yeah, in talking with the kids, at least the advice. They're looking for advice on how to approach things, mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's just listening. One of the last times I just sat and listened. I just listened, and then I thought, if we were in a counseling session, I would probably bring up some things, not to condemn, but to say, maybe if you went in that direction. But Just counseling them, on love and not condemning, but still saying it's wrong, like using the word wrong. It's wrong. It really is wrong. There is a wrong and a right way to live, and this is a wrong way to live.
Yeah.
And just and to say I love you, but it's wrong.
It's like I said in our Bible study last night. You can, if somebody is in, say, like a drug addiction, you can still tell them it's wrong, but that doesn't mean you have to go, here's $20 for you to go get your next thing, but it's still wrong. Like you're enabling. Sometimes love is saying, hey, you have a problem and I still love you. Let me help you work through this, whatever we can do to solve this problem.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where people miss the mark sometimes, in not just in life, but also sometimes in the church as a whole. So,
right. And just like I said, keeping it, directing it just like it is with any other addiction. If you're talking to your gay son or your daughter who wants to be a man, it's just like, you're talking to somebody that's occasionally using drugs, and you don't need to be hanging out with these people. You don't need to be doing this, and but still loving them. But it's a full-time job. It's a full-time job. But that's what we sign up, when we become parents, we sign up for a full-time job. And so
mine's actually been texting me this whole time. So
I saw you.
You want to talk about a full-time job?
Yeah.
He got a new phone, so he's got questions, and he's just going to have to wait. But
yeah.
So, I want to make sure that we get him back in time for sleep for work and stuff. So you have anything else you want to follow up with, or any questions, or
nope,
anything we left out? Anything you want to talk about, or
no? Just thanks for having me, and
really appreciate you coming. It's great,
and it's really it's a blessing, and it's a blessing to be able to share my story, and it's a blessing to be able to, hopefully it'll help somebody, like so somebody will listen to this eventually.
That's what we want for it too.
Something's going to happen, and I might not see it, but who cares? As long as Jesus is preached, as long as the gospel is preached, and the miraculous things that this man who died on a cross 2,000 years ago can do for you, like he's real, a living word. He's real, and he's alive, and he's sharper than any double-edged sword, and he lives inside of you, and you can feel the same way that I feel. You feel it. He's real.
Yep.
He's not some pie in the sky.
Agreed.
He's a real man, and he's there for you, and he is the narrow way. He is the narrow way.
Well, Nate said it best. Nate said it best when we kind of first started this podcast. Was if this whole podcast journey, if we just help like one person, like it's totally worth it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that's our same mindset as well.
If I reach one person and never go anywhere else and stay the rest of my life in Sterling, Kansas, it was all worth it.
Our church, if you stay the rest of your life in Sterling, Kansas, our church is going to look like $1 million for the rest of your life.
Praise God.
You're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you. Praise God for that. Yeah.
So you want to wrap it up, homie?
Yep. Just want to say thanks for listening, guys, and hope you enjoyed the episode. If you wouldn't mind, we'd like you to share the podcast and check out our Instagram and social medias at The Higher Points. Give us a like and a share, and once again, thanks for listening.
We'll catch up with you guys next time. Thanks.